Okay, welcome. This was going to be a Facebook Live, but Facebook kept cutting out on me today. Obviously, this is a podcast that is meant to be just myself sharing, and I do have something really important to share. Um, just recently, with a client of mine, she was having some difficulties trying to understand what was happening for her partner. Her partner was having quite a bit of a struggle, an internal struggle, and of course, he had things going on in life that he was trying to deal with. But also, what I have noticed myself is a collective struggle going on for men right now. And I'm going to read, when I shared with her what I've observed through the lead up to the solar eclipse and the solar eclipse itself and the afterglow of that, um, was when I shared with her what I've noticed in my clients, what many women are noticing is happening in their male friends, partners, and what I've noticed in my clients coming in is that there's been this real struggle going on for a lot of men, and it coincided really interestingly with the solar eclipse. Now, I felt this collective kind of purging going on quite, about 2 weeks before the solar eclipse. I was pretty much going sideways. I was losing my mind, even to the point where I was feeling um, somewhat like suicidal. Not that I would take my life, but I was even asking myself, where is this coming from? What is what are these thought forms that are coming in? What is all of this energy of emotion going on? Now, of course, a lot of this was my own stuff, but it was also being triggered off by the collective consciousness as well. And I've always been very observant. I've always been observant of what's going on in the world and going on within myself. And from a really young age, I've always been very empathic, especially to the difficulties that go on in this world collectively. I would almost feel that within myself. And so, what I'm going to do is I promised my client I'd write a blog on this because the insight I gave her helped her to understand she was actually in a really good space to become a space holder for her partner, for this man in her life. And I've also mentioned this to other colleagues and clients and aspirants that have come in for healing, just making them aware of what is actually happening in this time. And of course, this broadcast is all about healing, what that means, which we unpack together, but going into the different aspects of that, and also what it means to be very, very present and aware, becoming more present, as a parent coach. I'm a life coach in general. I'm actually a mystic, but I coach people. I also use vibrational energy medicine to help people heal. But as a mystic and a parent coach, I help parents understand the power of being present, of finding what I call their present state awareness. Present state awareness is the most powerful state that you can be in. When you're really, really present, you're not in thought as such. You're present to what is. You're present to reality. You're not present to a dream. Dreams are just like thoughts, and thoughts are just like dreams. And I'll talk about that in another broadcast. But today I want to read this blog that I promised my client I'd write for her to as a reminder of what's going on, but also um, she found it helpful what I had to share. And if that's helpful for her, it's obviously going to be helpful for many others out there. And this um, blog that I'm about to read out is it's called The Hangover of the Solar Eclipse and what that means for the masculine and feminine. And so take what you will from it. This broadcast is all about healing and being present, but I'm no guru. I don't know it all. No one person has it all. The collective might be onto something. If we can, find that common ground to bring our differences, which is called agreement. We don't have to actually agree on what's being said. We can agree with each other that we are all valid, and our own truths can be validated. We can encourage each other to say, well, that's your truth. Own your truth. Be in your truth. Live through your truth. And I'm going to read this blog now, and then I'm going to open it up a little bit more from there. On this podcast, it would usually be, this is only the second episode, of course, but it would usually be, my intention was to have it an open forum where people can click on the Zoom link and come in, and we can have a discussion. People can come in and even disagree with what I've got to say, but not disagree just to be right, but to disagree, to open up our consciousness, to be open to each other, to explore more and go deeper. So here is the blog. I'm going to read it out. I'm going to take my time with it, let it soak in, and enjoy. This blog is by request. In a coaching session with one of my clients, I helped her to see something that was going on within the man in her life. This was something that I was observing taking place in the collective. I could feel this build-up taking place within myself, my clients, and as I said, the collective. I've always been empathic to the condition of the human race. The confusion of the world as I saw it, even as a child, was always voiced within me with the word, why? If you felt strongly this way as a child, then you are likely too to be sensitive to the collective mind and emotion. For me, it comes through as very deep physical pain and emotions that can couple with my own personal baggage. Back to the point, we just recently had an event of great significance and energetic influence on our dynamic and multi-layered existence. And many have not understood the broad impact this even had on the collective psyche and archetype. The solar eclipse was heavily anticipated and widely acknowledged in its coming. Everyone with every prediction and question was slaying social media with premonition and science about what would take place and what this event meant for the earth and its life forms. And then there were those of the old school that were in slight awe, but in a far more relaxed attitude about it. This is nothing new, no big deal. An amazing phenomenon, though. Whether we subscribe to it or not, us humans evidently have a collective conscious and unconscious habits and resonance with both the sun and the moon. The sun sets our circadian rhythm, and the moon governs the waters and all that it contains. Or, sorry, all that is contained by it. Another aspect to be just as aware of, if you're one for the symbolisms and metaphysics of nature's expression, is the archetypal correlations and synonyms of the sun of the masculine and the moon of the feminine. The sun is active and aggressively outward in its expression, encompassing the provider of the man we have traditionally seen, especially in the patriarchal society of the more recent millennia. The moon, in its reflective nature of flow and cycle, mysterious in its stillness and luminous subtle light, as the woman of this earth, has been so beautified and beheld, yet almost regarded as less important due to our cultural infatuation with doing and acquiring over being and inquiring. It is deeply embedded into the collective consciousness of the subconscious mind, even for the unaware, that the sun is man and the moon is woman by the energy of their form and state. So what does this have to do with my client whose man was having the proverbial meltdown? Well, I felt this meltdown coming up in myself leading up to the event of the total eclipse and climaxing with it in my emotional and physical bodies at its defining moment. Since its subsiding, I have felt, known, and experienced a shift in my energies, subtle bodies, and psyche. I've noticed something that is offering an opportunity for entrance into a timeline that could return humanity to a balance of the masculine and feminine within each of us. The moon eclipsing the sun can be equated to the woman eclipsing man. The women of the world have really been doing the work over the last decades. When it comes to things spiritual, emotional, and mental, they've really been doing the heavy lifting. While the majority of men, on a collective level, have opted for pride and ignorance over self healing and spiritual growth. I know this because at every retreat, healing session, and spiritual gathering that I've attended, they've been predominantly attended and filled with women. I've always been asking at these events, where my boys at? Well, this imbalance has come to roost, and male is now subjected to those parts of himself that he's been ignoring for too long. Women are on the rise in all areas of life, and the solar eclipse signified and activated the alignment that is energetically there for them to thrive and bypass the madness that the patriarchy elite are trying to impose upon the world. She is rising like the sun. He has some deep inner reflection to do. And that is why so many men are purging the old generational control, anger, domination mindset, and superiority complex. I have experienced this purging in myself, and I am seeing it in many other men. So, what are men to do? Well, nothing but heal. The solar eclipse has spoken in metaphor. The divine feminine is strong and has been empowered to hold space for the divine masculine to catch up on their inner healing work. To ignore this opportunity is to collectively continue on a path of imbalance. The feminine has led the way, and it is time for the masculine to follow her example, to move inward, face his shadows, and retrieve his light. Too many men for too long have given way to ego and insisted that they are fine when they know very well that they have suppressed inner wounds of the heart. Think of all the countless men that have given their lives for stupid, senseless wars, the arrogance that has been programmed into man by the dominator culture, the shut up and push through attitude that propaganda has insisted. Man, it is time to embrace the inner feminine energy of reflection and inner self inquiry. It is time for embracing the unseen aspects of the self, the inner child that needs you to acknowledge him, and the willpower of acceptance and let go of the ways of the past. This is the dawn of a new age, the age of balance. Will see the ridiculous imposition of the dominated culture finally laid to rest. That old way is kicking and screaming on its way to the grave. It is evident in the aggressive propaganda control of the toxic patriarchy elite. Woman, thank you for doing the inner work, for expanding human consciousness. You have awoken and you are on fire and in flow. You will not be fooled again. And may man come into the slipstream of your glorious luminosity. There's time for man to follow your example and have your back, trusting in your lead, just as symbolized in the eclipse. So, what to do for both the masculine and feminine? Men, heal. Woman, keep holding the beautiful space for men to go deep. You've led the way, and the reward of the incredible inner work that you have done has empowered you to be that amazing container that the masculine needs in this time in order to go deep and meet her in wholeness. This is not time for one to take off and leave the other behind. It is also not a time for the other to keep ignoring the inner work that must be done to bring us back to balance. The new age of the harmonized human is there for us if we choose. This timeline is ripe for the taking, but we must understand that the polarity timeline is also being pressed upon us by those that dominate and govern the mind, that being the control system. So, how do we overcome the control system that we find ourselves so buried in? We must let go of control ourselves. You see, true control is letting go. It is only the ego that seeks to control. It is only the ego that has an insatiable need to be right. And this need to be right was programmed into the ego by the state-run schooling system. 13 years of your life forced to get it right, or you get that dreaded cross beside your name. You are literally crucified by the will of the dominator culture. The ego has been hijacked. Its original purpose was to keep one safe as well as others. This has been the role of the masculine, the intended role. For the ego is masculine in nature, but this hijacking has taught the masculine to be a war machine, to close the heart and see vulnerability as the enemy. Men, it is time to be vulnerable so that we can extricate the divine masculine from the chains of its own aggression. The divine feminine has eclipsed the false masculine and is now the space holder for the masculine to heal, to now do what she has faithfully done to raise herself above the toxicity of suppression and ignorance. All men carry the ancestral wounds of the battlefield that is the altar that our sons were sacrificed upon by the elite that are the masters of division. Allow yourself to be healed by her, by the divine mother, so that we may be nurtured and encouraged to grow into the angelic servants of the divine feminine. Men, do not be threatened by her power of ease and stillness. Do not give way to jealousy. Have your tantrum and let go of the collective and personal anger that waits at the door of your tear-choking throat. But don't take it out on her. Don't deceive yourself in pity. Know that she sees you. Know that she feels you. Know that she heals you. Then, once more, the sun of the divine masculine shall rise again, strong and stable, willing and able to hold the safe container that the divine feminine and the woman long for. To give woman again the grace to completely relax into their divine feminine blueprint. The balance is up to us all. The at-one-ment, the atonement awaits our dedication to each other. Do it for her. Do it for yourself. Let there be light. And so hopefully you get the gist of that. When we went through the solar eclipse, it was really evident, we know that the sun represents the masculine energy, the moon represents the feminine energy. And the fact that we collectively made such a big deal about this total eclipse says, speaks about how when our attention collectively is placed on that, it affects us collectively. kind of you think about Christmas time once the the Christmas carols come out in the shopping malls and you see the tinsel and the bells and all the decorations. We collectively, all of us, then prepare for Christmas. We know what's going to go on here. And so when we, even for those that don't understand this or know this, it's still deep within the collective psyche that the sun represents the masculine and the moon represents the feminine. And we had this total eclipse of the moon coming over and hiding the sun. And that has been very, very threatening for many men. And they don't know why. They almost feel threatened by the feminine right now. There's many men out there. I only know this because I work in this area of healing. And I'm noticing this myself. I always only speak from experience, but also for me as an empath and being one that is empathic to the collective mindset, I could feel what was going on. I went through that struggle myself. Yes, there was definitely my own baggage there to deal with, but there was a lot there that I was feeling, like I said, like suicidal thoughts or not feeling any value at all, being challenged in such a way that I knew was not just mine. There was a part of it that was ancestral and maybe past life, but there was definitely a part of it I was feeling in my body, the pain of the collective masculine. We have sacrificed our sons at the altar of war, all the while leaving widows behind, and women have had to learn and actually take up a very masculine role in themselves, where even now it's insisted upon, where the dominator culture is squeezing us so tightly that most women now they as much as they would love to stay at home with their children and ensure that they're raised with nurture and care and love, are having to send them off again, like sending them off to war. They're already having to go out into the world, and it's great for socializing, but still, there's much more to learn and receive from mum at such a tender young age. Because of the pressures that are placed upon us through commercialism, through the industrialization of our world, we're now raising children that have a mother wound, a deep mother wound, because mum has had to go and work and take on that masculine role. Now, I'm not saying that all mums should stay at home. I'm even I'm noticing how many men are stepping into that role of stay at home fathers. We know that children develop so much better if they get that at least 12 months to 2 years, really moving into 3 years, and then maybe swap the roles over a little bit as the child gets around 3 to 4. It's different per child, but then the masculine men, it's the best development that can go on for children, especially for boys when they reach the age of 5, is to be gleaning into the father. The father comes in and takes the child and says, let's, come on, we're going to move out into the world. I'm going to show you how to be in the world. You've had the nurture, you've had the care, you've had the love that we all desire to have from the mother. And that needs to be laid down, really, those first 5 years to 7 years, that first stage of really being at one with mother, and then moving into the oneness with the father, and that gives the opportunity, but men are so challenged by that as well, to then allow the feminine to be more of the breadwinner. We are in a different age, and women have ambition, which is great, to have a career and all of that. But when they have to go to the front line because they're forced to, that is the violence that's been done upon the family. The family unit is being ripped apart by design so that we become anxious and divided within ourselves. We're no longer individuals. We begin to cultivate this mob mindset, and then we start taking it out on each other. We could do things so much more beautifully and so much more kindly and more integrated as men and women. The kindergarten situation. When I noticed I used to drop my kids off to kindergarten um, quite a bit, and I loved doing that and dropping them off to school. I worked for myself, and so it gave me the opportunity to be able to um, have that time with my kids. In fact, when I cast my mind all the way back, after my wife had, at the time, had given birth to our first child, I really stepped into that supportive role. You see, human beings are very unique. That they're not like other mammals. It still takes like basically 12 months, but anywhere between sort of 9 months and onwards, it's like the second stage of gestation takes place outside of the body, where there's still so much more growing to do for the child before they're kind of like semi-independent, before they're walking and beginning to understand themselves as their own, growing their own autonomy. And we have lived in a society where it's just all lumped upon the mother because the father has to go out and provide. One thing that I've learned from my beloved Devi, who's taught me about, she encapsulates placentas and all of that. And she informed me, and it makes sense, that it takes 2 years for a woman to bounce back from childbirth, to basically be back to her full self, where she would be prepared to then, if wanting to, carry another baby. But it takes 2 years to repair from child from growing that baby and giving birth itself. It's a big passage for women to go through. And really, what I did and what I noticed built an incredible bond between myself and my two paternal children is I was on board with the support of mum and child from the word go. I didn't get much sleep because when baby woke up for a feed, I would be the one that would get up, get baby out of the bassinet, pass baby on to a mother so baby could feed, and then I would take baby and burp baby and put baby back to sleep or back to bed. I took that role on and it built a bond. It was teamwork. And what that meant was she wasn't so exhausted during the day. And so I was coming home to a home that was like really clean and balanced because she didn't have to, as they always say, to mothers, sleep when baby sleeps. I didn't, I actually allowed her to rest. And so even though I was going to work and I was exhausted, but men, we don't have to carry that baby for 9 months. The second 9 months is where you're carrying that baby, where you're carrying that extra weight. And we should be there to support and serve the mother because she's going into repair. But men get this mindset that no, I've got to work, so I need all my energy for that. What I learned is that I was able to dig deeper than I even knew I could. The children coming into my life and supporting my wife at the time as much as I could, equally taking part in the chores and the service of the child as the mother was doing. It empowered me. It helped me realize a depth of myself that I could reach. It built a bond between myself and my children that many men have overlooked. And now we find, and so for me, it was I can see how I really laid down a beautiful foundation for now my children are my best friends. The bond was created in the beginning. It's not just have a baby and then, yet we get so unconscious in our activity of life. We get so unconscious and habitual, and we just get on with how society insists that we should be and how we should do it. Even down to, now we would rather um, for a while there, it was more about keeping up with the Joneses, where mums are going out and building a career um, because the world is actually programming that into you. Okay, we are missing our opportunities all the time because we don't stop to be present and still and conscious and aware of what's actually going on here. When we bring a human being into the world, but bringing a human being into the world. I mean, it's no small thing. And men and women need to be a team within that. Now, I know there's situations where women uh, are doing it on their own, and men, some men for that matter. There was a time when my marriage split where I was also raising my children. It was 50-50 care, but when I had them, I was doing it on my own. But it wasn't hard for me because I had always been a participant in parenting from the word go, and it wasn't hard to do. It was super, well, it was hard to do, and it was challenging, but it was worth it. And that's how we, you know, that I was insisting to myself, I was bringing into my own subconscious mind that these children were worth it, that I was worth it. If it's difficult, that's where the worth is. One of the things I noticed at kindergarten, when I dropped the kids off at kindergarten, it was so funny because um, the ones that were at the gate when you're leaving, the ones with the arms reaching through the gate and they're crying and they're sobbing and it's the end of the world, like mommy. It was predominantly the boys. Okay, like I would look back and that's the thing. I'm really observant about these things, and I noticed the girls, um, uh, generally were way more calmer about the situation. They sort of got on with it. And I've noticed, that's the way that it's been moving, is that the feminine has been getting on with what needs to be done because the masculine, we think that it's just the feminine that's been suppressed, but the masculine has been um, totally violated as well. And we have these young boys still, or adults right now, that have a young boy inside them that has a wound, a mother wound. And this mother wound they carry into their relationships. And then the relationships break up. I know that. I've been married twice. And because I hadn't healed my mother wound, that's why I was married twice. That's why I was finding, you know, I wouldn't say they're not the right woman, but I was not healed. I had not looked into the parts of me. I knew it was there. I was ignoring it on purpose. I was doing the typical male thing where it's like, she'll be right and we carry on, especially in New Zealand here. But you see, men, it's time to heal that inner child. It's time to heal that young boy. And men are still sitting on their hands. I'm seeing a good rise of men wanting to get vulnerable and come forward and working with different people, assisting in breath work and workshops and what have you. There are men beginning to come in, but it's very sheepish, like, it's that they're not, there's still a huge imbalance there. It's that 80-20 rule. Yeah, in a space of um 10 people in a spiritual gathering, it'll be two men predominantly. And that's why in the blog I talk about, the women have done the work. As a healer, I've noticed that predominantly I see more women, and so does Devi. We have far more women coming in doing the healing work than men. And men just think, oh no, I'll just keep getting on with it. That's not how it works. And it's not how we're going to move into a new age of oneness and unity and support. I don't think it's any coincidence when you look at it, look into the ancient scriptures, that the angels, when we look at the angels, they are Michael, Gabriel, Ariel, all these Raphael, all these angels are masculine. They're men. It's interesting, right? Why is that? Because they're strong physically and probably mental on all levels. Now, when you look at men, it's really, really evident they are stronger than women. So what does that suggest? Well, the divine masculine has the strength. Why? To support the divine feminine. You see, the masculine is about activity and acquiring and getting and providing and supporting and protecting, whereas the divine feminine is about rest. and receptivity and inquiry and depth and stillness, love, peace, nurture, all of those things. The more passive energy. But the masculine has been passive in its own healing. It has sacrificed itself in the workforce. I see it all the time. I was a tradesman for 27 years and I would just see men just punish themselves to provide. And I'm not saying that's bad because there was certainly a certain amount of self-value they got out of it. I could see that men felt like I'm providing for my family and I'm suffering for it. And I get that because if you're going to suffer, suffer what you love. But the one thing that was being completely negated is that feminine aspect of themselves, the part of them. But men still have the feminine aspect within themselves, and they need to be able to return, receive, inner stand, find peace and stillness within themselves. Of course, it's like when you look at the yin yang, there's that little bit of dark inside the light. And inside the light, and inside the darkness, is that little bit of light. And that part is not to be um, forgotten for the masculine, for the man, as he's being a man. It is not healthy for him to negate the feminine part of himself that brings balance to his individual. And that applies for the woman. But you see, the woman, you see, you when you look at it, the masculine is about work. Like I said, it's acquisition, it's activity. But women have been doing the inner work. There's also the work that needs to take place within yourself. And so they've been working hard at that. That's the masculine energy taking place within them. And so women have done a wonderful job of polar integrating, but then also some of them have gone so far the other way. They're all just that they're becoming more like men than they are women, and forgetting to embrace their own feminine divine blueprint. Men, in many ways, are carrying a part of the feminine stillness, but it's almost as if it's like a give up, like giving up and just not bothering, not even looking at what's going on the inside, because of course the masculine energy is about all what's on the outside, and the feminine energy is all about what's on the inside. And so women have really done a wonderful job of going in. They've been going into their divine aspect, and and the masculine has been going into their physical aspect, but not their divine aspect, like doing the work inside. There's work to be done inside and there's work to be done outside. But men have just remained on that masculine aspect of just do the work on the outside, forget about the inner work, it doesn't matter. But everything that comes from you comes from within. And so the work on the inside is far more important than the work on the outside. When men can find the being of themselves within, then their doing comes from their being. They're established firmly within themselves, and the young child is nourished, held, and nurtured, and set free, not bound in the past. All of us need to do the inner work. And of course, I'm speaking on very general terms here. We must allow each of us to see within ourselves and provide the different opportunities. I'm not saying that women shouldn't be working. I'm not saying anything like that. I'm not even insisting that there's a way in which we should do things. I'm opening up the conversation here for us to look into some deep truths. We are moving into the age of conscious awareness, or the age of ignorance. And it's ironic that in this age of information, we're becoming more and more ignorant to ourselves and simply only aware of that which is happening outside of us. That's what the patriarchy dominator culture wants to do is have us keep looking outwardly. That's masculine. It's always been like that. Keep looking out. Everything you need is outside of you. Everything you need, you have to acquire. It's not the case. The feminine energy has the way, understands everything you need is everything you already are. Relax into that, and then healing takes place. Each and every one of us need to learn to integrate the feminine aspect of ourselves because the majority of people now are too yang. It's very difficult to find another human being out there that is yin. Now, it's so ironic that it's more difficult to be yin than it is yang. Yang is all about activity, so you have to do. That's effort. And yet the real effort, because we've been so heavily programmed, is actually in just being. When I offer people and teach them meditation, they're so resistant because there's no doing in it. People will say, well, I don't know how to meditate. I say, it's quite simple. You just sit there, sit still, close your eyes down, or just relax your eyes, your eyelids, and just look at a spot in front of you. And guess what the next question is? The majority of people go, and then what? And you see, they can't help themselves. We've all been so heavily programmed to be more masculine. The masculine energy, the dominator, the aggressive energy has been so heavily programmed into us. We've been conditioned by it. To undo this binding that we're in is actually going to take great non-effort. And that's an effort in itself. In Taoism, they call it Wu Wei, which is doing through non-doing. And that's that feminine principle, whether the inner work is done by not trying to solve the problems within you. That's a masculine principle again. The inner work is slowing down, stopping, going in, and seeing for yourself, experiencing the truth of what you are, which is ultimately the stillness, the acceptance, the surrender. But we're all challenged and threatened by that because really the only one that can ever feel threatened is that masculine energy again. The feminine is restful, receptive. The masculine is aggressive and forceful. And that doesn't mean bad. When I say aggressive, it just speaks of that more imposing energy. It's energy that goes outways. And the feminine can also carry, that emulate that as well, going into that aggressive behavior. But in order for us to find acceptance in each other and move into a new age of peace, love and harmony, and I'm not just saying that we sit around the fire and sing Kumbaya. We we are always going to be active. Activity happens. People say to me, "Oh, I can't just sit around and do nothing." And it's like, no, try it. Try and sit around and do nothing. You can do that if you tried. And that's the thing, most of us, and this applies to women as well. So many of us, we can't stop the doing. And even if it's not a physical activity, we can't slow the thinking. That is still doing. Thinking is still a doing. In fact, it's probably the most stressful kind of doing that we all do. Instead of just being, witnessing, watching, allowing. So that's there we go. As I say, I really feel this is just my opinion here. You don't have to agree with me on this, but I really feel this solar eclipse signified a fork in the road where it was really a milestone. It was a reminder. It was showing us women predominantly have been doing the work, have been doing the inner spiritual work. They've been getting on with what's important, knowing thyself. Predominantly, it's been women. We all know that. It's not men we see flocking to um, the healing retreats. It's not men that we see flocking to their their healers or vibrational energy medicine practitioners or NLP practitioners or counselors. It's not men flocking to that because they have this understanding. I don't need that. I'm a man, and it couldn't be anything further from the truth. So hopefully, in my next broadcast, I'm able to bring people online. Today, Facebook was not friendly to me, and that's fine because, again, we go into acceptance of that. This podcast today was obviously just meant to be myself, and I hope you got some value out of that. And I hope to have some of you join me at some point in a live broadcast. Until then, I'm sending you all my love and let there be light.